Hey everyone, I wanted to welcome you today to the really fun and exciting presentation about the minimum viable platform, aka the MVP, here at PlatformCon. So this is the proven framework we've used here at Humanitec to successfully help our customers implement not just our product, but also platform engineering initiatives. So what you're going to see today is the result of just over a year of iteration, of practice, and of doing this with hundreds of different customers, and the result is what you will see. So very quickly to get started, my name is Mallory. I am the Director of Customer Success at Humanitec. I am actually a software engineer by background, who very quickly, once DevOps became a thing and became more popular to have engineers actually running what they're building themselves, I quickly realized there was a problem. And I was very glad to find Humanitec and platform engineering as a philosophy, which I believe solves a lot of the problems in this space. So let's take a look really quickly at what I want to go over with you today. I want to cover 4 key areas. The first is, what is a minimum viable platform? It's easy to get that confused with minimum viable product, so I want to make sure you understand what we're talking about there. Next, we'll go over the 4 phases of the MVP. There are 4 really distinct phases to this process with aligned things underneath each of them and specific outcomes that you need to be aware of in order for this to work. I also want to talk about some common pitfalls and solutions. So very often, people make mistakes in this process. We've learned how to avoid those mistakes, and we have some best practices in place so you can avoid them too. And finally, I'm really excited to share how you can go beyond MVP and start thinking about the future. There's a couple very interesting resources that we've come up with that I think you'll find very exciting to get you beyond just the MVP. So let's start. What is a minimum viable platform? We believe that there is a certain set of outcomes that comes with doing things this way. Minimum viable platforms, MVPs, are a way to show the value of your platform engineering initiative very quickly. And what you're going to do is follow a structure and a pathway that enables you to meet some very specific criteria. So what we want to make sure we can achieve inside of this is that we've identified a pioneering developer team that can lead the way on innovation. These are the people that are going to adopt this platform first, and these are the people that we're actually going to build the minimum viable platform around. So the first version of your internal developer platform should really be representative of a big part of your organization. And in the context of that pioneering team, should meet their non-production requirements. We don't touch production environments inside of MVPs. And it's very important to understand that that does come, just not quite yet. We'll look at it a little bit down the road. The other thing you're going to end up with is a product-like roadmap for iteration and growth, and not just from a technical perspective of how your platform can evolve, but also from the perspective of how you can grow it internally inside your organization and get people on board. We're also going to make sure we can interact with really influential stakeholders inside this process. It's not just technical teams that have to be excited about this. We need to talk to security. We need to talk to data. We need to talk to folks in finance often in order to get platform engineering initiatives off the starting line. So it's really important we get those quickly and we get them excited, and we can do that easily inside of the context of the MVP. We also, and this is probably my favorite part about doing things this way, we are able to avoid having to win over every single technical team immediately. We're able to scale sensibly through an organization. We can work through the technical teams in a way that makes sense without scaring anybody about the complexities and fear of moving to a brand new way of working. MVPs should be 3 things. They should be representative, they should be repeatable, and they should be iterative. When you design your minimum viable platform, it should be representative of the basic resources and components that are common across your whole tech estate. So maybe you have 1 or 2 database types that everybody's using. Perhaps you have a CI/CD system that a majority of the teams are using as well. Some may have something different. So let's pick the ones or the applications, that work inside of that common system. If your application structure has irregularities, try to pick something that's very regular to work with. That might be front end, back end, data services. If your microservice structure is broken down in a particular way, you're going to want to consider that. It should also be repeatable. So whatever you are building should be the foundation on which you continue to iterate on your IDP. It should also be a quick start in terms of the philosophy and steps in order to bring on additional teams. Every single stage of the MVP is repeatable as you grow and bring more teams on board. So think about that and how you can reuse that inside of your strategy. Finally, it should also be iterative. This is not going to solve all of your problems at once. You aren't going to save the world of developers or platform engineers by doing the MVP, but you're going to give a baseline start. Start small and think about the future. This isn't the end. There is no end here. Iteration is innovation. And just kind of thinking about it that way makes it a lot easier to contextualize how small you have to start. So let's look at the 4 phases of the MVP. And we've broken this down in 4 phases because it seems to be the easiest way to break down the project into digestible chunks. Project managers are going to really like this next slide. The 4 primary phases are discovery, integration, deployment, and adoption or adoption planning. It sort of depends on how you see the next steps. Inside of the discovery, this is where you're going to review your technical outcomes. You're going to look at your golden paths. What are the problems you're trying to solve? Stay outcome focused. Always be thinking about what are we trying to actually achieve here, not just about what technical things are we trying to do. You want to make sure that at the end of the day, you're not building something that no one is going to use. You're building something to actually solve problems. In this phase as well, you want to make sure that your project management teams are all completely aligned. If they aren't, you're going to have a problem. Make sure that everyone knows where they're at, what they're supposed to be doing, and when they're supposed to be doing it. So make sure you spend some good time on this, because if you fail here, the whole thing will fall apart. The next 2 phases are the technical integration phases, where you do the nitty-gritty building things and connecting things together. First, you're going to start with the platform itself. Give a baseline setup of your infrastructure, so your clusters and your DNS and your secrets management and anything else that needs to come inside of building the platform as a basis. After that, you'll move into the deployment phase, which is actually where you're going to bring the application in and start with the workloads. So every single component of that sample application or that representative application you've decided to use should be implemented here. By the end of phase 3, you should be able to test against a full end-to-end flow. Phase 4 is adoption and adoption planning. So from here, we're going to think about how do we grow this thing. When we have that end-to-end flow testing able to be done, we should test it against the golden paths that we need to be able to allow engineers and platform engineers to use. So here you're going to basically do what we would call in customer success testing. Here you're also going to want to try and build a demo that you can reuse to talk to different audiences. How you demo your platform to engineers will be very different from how you demo it to leadership, to finance, to the other people that are having to buy into your initiative. So this is where you think about that. Adoption and roadmap planning is also important here, and I will touch on that shortly. Just remember, keep your MVP infra and applications simple, representative, and scalable. That's really the golden rule. So what are the common pitfalls we've seen, and what are the built-in solutions inside of this framework that will keep them from happening? Of course, people go outside the boundaries of our framework and often will encounter these problems anyway because they aren't in the right mindset. And we try to bring them back with aligning them to the philosophy of why we're doing this to begin with. So think about it this way. Very often people rush to complexity. They need to solve all of the problems at once. Every single engineer needs to have their needs met. Every single team needs to be able to be thought about right from day one, and it must be integrated that way. That will make you fail. It's too much too quickly, and you'll never be able to scale through it. So start small, iterate, and grow. Embrace that mindset of continuous improvement. This thing is never done. There's no such thing as done in software engineering. There's only iteration and innovation. The next pitfall we will see people fall into is that they only focus on the tools and the technology stack they're trying to build on. This is great from an engineering perspective, and it's fun in a lot of ways, but don't forget that you're here to focus on solving problems and building golden paths. You need to track usage, you need to track adoption, and understand how you can increase both of those things, not just from a technological perspective. It has to be about use as well. Probably one of the biggest pitfalls we see people fall into, or that they've already fallen into inside of trying to do platform engineering, is they build a platform no one wants to use. So you need to focus on the users and the right level of abstraction for those users. Try to think about productivity, impact, and satisfaction when you're building your platform. Those are three key, I would say, keywords to think about in that process. And finally, and this one's really quite interesting, and it's that developer experience isn't just about developers. And often people get stuck thinking it is. It's actually about a lot of other stakeholders, and falling into the pitfall of thinking it's only about devs will actually result in failure at the end. You need pioneers and champions and a community that is built around solving the problems here. It's not just about devs having an easier work experience. It's about saving money on cloud costs. It's about getting to market faster. It's about employee satisfaction. There are so many different things to think about. So how do you go beyond the MVP? I get asked this all of the time. So what we are doing is starting to really formulate this and put it in a similar sort of phasing and design that the MVP is in, because it's really easy to digest. The path beyond MVP doesn't have to be scary. We've come up with a scalable process that we've made possible by thinking about adoption planning and design incredibly early. If you look at this diagram, what you essentially do is take the ideas of developers and their needs, you take a best practices approach, and you take their existing tool chain and put them inside of an MVP. Some people call this a pilot program. We also think of the MVP in the context of part of a proof of concept. After MVP, we recommend moving to what we call production readiness. So whether or not you touch prod environments at this point doesn't quite matter. What's important is that you're thinking about how to get there. As you get new adopters along the way and you get new features, you have to think about the feedback you're getting, prioritize what you're doing, and evolve the platform based on that. And that's really full-scale adoption. So try to think of it this way and make your life easier. If you remember that it's always cyclical, that it's always repeating, you're going to be in a much better space. And remember that a proof of concept is an MVP plus production readiness, which is a really important way to think about things. Adoption planning has 5 quick steps to success that I will leave you with today to think about as you're designing your MVP. We need to define our objectives and goals, decide the cohorts of teams and prioritize them, discover their requirements as you go through each cohort, and develop a way to communicate internally why this is the way to go. Finally, when you go through all of this, you should be able to have a model for adoption and plan for going towards full scale. And that's really critical and something to start thinking about from absolutely day one. If you do that, you will succeed. And finally, I want to leave you with a quote. If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you have never done. Platform engineering is really important, and I think a game-changing philosophy inside this space. And when you think about the MVP, it's an easier way to do something that you haven't done before. It's a lower risk way of entering into a space that can solve a lot of problems. So I encourage you to think about all this when you start planning your internal developer platform and your platform engineering experience. And in reality, best of luck. And please let me know if you have any questions. Really looking forward to seeing your thoughts on this and seeing how the community builds their own MVPs as we go forward. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of PlatformCon.